Okay. So with the document, I already have it new, just going to File, New to show it to you. Again, to take a look at the top of this menu as you see this, it gives you the title up here at the top. It gives you the measurement. I have it set to points. You can always change this, but my unit of rulers are at points, which I kind of like. Gives it a little more finer tuning when you're working with some of the items. And then it just shows to the left the recent or what you've saved, and it gives you the other options for mobile, web, print, video, and art illustration. I'm just going to go to the print window, and the letter size page is horizontal 8.5 by 11. When you click to a bleed, we don't need a bleed on this, which is going over the edge of the page, and more settings. Just kind of gives you the CMYK, the resolution, for rastering your drawings if anything becomes rasterized, and you can change it from cyan, magenta, yellow, and black to RGB if you wish. That's just on screen, but it'll show some of the colors that you won't get. So I'm just going to keep it set and create the document, which I already have. And when we take a look, we did a little bit before with the patterns. If I reset this to black and white and just create a simple circle and Command or Shift X to switch it around, this is going to give me the pattern. We did it with the flooring before, which was just a rectangular shape, kind of simulating a floorboard. And I'm also going to throw in here with the shapes with the hexagon, because it's going to talk about that as it goes through some of the parameters. So these three simple shapes, kind of building that part up. When you go to the object and hit pattern, make automatically warns you that it's going to put this pattern listed in your swatches panel over to the right. So I'll click OK, and you'll see a little window pop up. And I already have the rectangular piece, so I'll go over it real quickly. But as a new pattern, had you do brick by brick so you can see the rows. If you offset the rows, it goes by columns, and if you can see it's offsetting the columns there. And if you go by hexagon, it'll take it and use the pattern of a hexagon, but you can see how closely it's distorted. There's the hexagon shape right there. So, and it gives you hex by row, so it does the same thing only by the rows itself. I wouldn't recommend using the hexagon. I'm just trying to show all three of these, but brick by brick is where you go. And if you go into the offset, you have all these parameters to set. So like 4/5 of this, if you could divide this up, I probably should have made it so it's easy to see it. But there's 4/5 coming across this selection, and gives you those images. Any of those ratios that you see are the fractions created into that image. The distance, width, and height, if it's going even, this is a link box linking both of them together. If it's taken off, or it'll go independently of each of those measurements. So when I do this going across, you can see it's separating it horizontally as well as vertical. So depending on which one of those you use to copy it. But since it's the flooring, I tried to make it as it goes in between these pieces. So that'll be the piece. If you size it to the scale of the art, this option, this disappears. The H and V, horizontal and vertical, come together. Again, I'll do it separately. You can see they're moving separately. If I click on the links them together, now when I do it, they go together, or they go separately. So keeping that together, you can kind of get that image. But keep in mind, it's with the shape itself. Okay, so you can do the same up in this location as the width and the height to build that section together. This overlaps. You can't really tell too much when this happens unless you have something overlapping itself, and we'll do that in a second. Copies just show you how many copies you're making 1-to-1. You may have 9 copies just to see what it looks like. The default, I set it to 5-to-5, and dim the copy so you can see the original, which, if I forgot to say before, is a motif, M-O-T-I-F, in a pattern. So that's the shape, or the motif, or whatever the image is that's repeated all this section across. Okay. So basically that's the selection for the patterns, and it does this in the isolation mode. When you back out, it takes you to this section. So we'll take this circle, for example, and do the same. And if it changes in any way, shape, or form, you'll see it happening. So here's the circle's offset. It does have a white line to it. Didn't bother taking that off. But if this is going to be brick by brick, row by row type of image, and again, using the distance to set this. Now if I overlap, I left the white line on there this time so that I can see this as a pattern. And this is a classical Greek pattern when you take a look at this fish scale that happens here. If I go down now to overlap and click, you'll see that it has 4 different options for 4 different locations. So you don't have to try to adjust it before you bring it in. It just automatically has this function for you. So just wanted to bring that piece in there. So I'll come out of that one. And then just have the hexagon on here so you can see that this piece, as far as it goes, I'm just giving it a blue stroke here, and then just go to Object Path and do the pattern. And again, it gives me the warning up there. So now you have the hexagon. Hexagon is another classical gridded shape other than a rectangular square for the checkerboard. But again, if you go row by row, you can see it falling itself in there. If you go and use the hexagon column choice along with the hexagon shape, it does fit it in much easier. There's many ways to do this, and you'll notice that the offset of this piece has the stroke on either side of the path, and when you see it connected to the next one, you can see the duplication of that. So those are just minor things that you have to consider when you're trying to make into a pattern here. Okay, so I'll go back from that. So now you have these 4 items. So if I just take a rectangular shape and go ahead and create what we've made there, make sure I have the X key clicked on, and just click on that pattern. So that gives me that selection. And that's for the flooring, and the rest of these are just for the duplicating for those pieces. So again, here's your swatches panel, and make sure that you have the X key hit up here, and gives you those 3 particular selections. So when you take a look, you can always double click on the item from here in order to put you right back into the editing mode for the pattern. Okay. Or if you don't want to ruin anything that you've just created, then just start from scratch. So again, here's the selection, taking the white path off of that, making it gray, for example. And here I'm just going to offset this just a little bit. Select it, go into the shape builder, just option and click on that. Make these 2 shapes, select the direct selection tool, and make it a little bit lighter, just so you can see it. So it's just a quick graphic, but if you haven't seen, just kind of helping along with this ball shape. If you don't want the image to be lost, you can always set the motif down there. Again, going to the object, pattern and make. I'll add this one right into it. Here's the image for it, brick by brick. Keep this link checked. That gives you that selection. And now when you want to try to do this golf ball, let's see if I can place that on there. So you can see that. And you can scale this. You can go back in and redo the scaling, change it from that idea, but it's just trying to get you to think along this idea of how you would start to illustrate it. It's not perfect as far as the design, just kind of getting a start into how you would try to illustrate that piece, because what happens is you can take the pattern, break it apart, and break it down to individual elements to help you with this, and also distort it as well. So once you have that image, for example, you can come over to the gradient for these two, select these two items, take an align tool, first put this one to back, and then select this, just to give you an idea. It won't be completed, but it'll give you the section of it at least. These two items to align them, and you just want to make sure, here's the align function to artboard, change it back to selection so that they go to one another. So you can kind of get an idea of how you can change some of this, and in order for it to have any kind of distortion, it gives you at least the beginning for the texture. But right now I just want you to understand and try the pattern, and this piece is going in for the flooring. So I'll show you that in making the wood grain in Photoshop.